It's totally fine. I have a lot more stories.
That you do.
Yeah.
That you do.
Guilty as charged with the stories.
Hello, loyal listeners. I'm Chris Whiting, and once again, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the podcast that I call I've Got Something to Say. This is the podcast where I tell you stories that you listen to in the car when you're working out. It's a podcast, so it's your choice. You get to listen wherever and whenever you want to. This week's episode is called Get the Let Out. So this should be a good one. So just a little bit of background and context for people that might not know me well. I have two daughters. They're 19 and 16 right now, Molly and Abby. Beautiful, smart, wonderful children, both adopted from China. So my first wife and I weren't able to conceive the way most people conceive, and we ended up adopting from China, which has been just truly a life-changing, life-altering experience. It's one of those things where I didn't think life was going to take this turn. And so, of course, you know, you're like, wait, life's supposed to go down path A, and it's not. Okay, I guess I'll go down path B. And then you find out, holy cow, path B is awesome. Well, that's what the whole adoption experience was like for moi. So we went and we got Molly in the year 2000. The year 2000. And then we went to get Abby in the year 2003. And that's what this little story is about going to get Abby, our second trip to China. So one of the things that enticed me as far as adopting from China was that you actually get to go to the country. So I thought that was really cool, because if I'm going to adopt a child from another country, I'd love to spend a little bit of time putting my toe in the culture and just seeing what things are like. So we had already been the first time when we got Molly, and then it came time to go round two to get Abby. Now, typically when you take these trips, you'll fly into Beijing and you'll spend 2 or 3 days just getting acclimated to the time change and the cultural differences. And you'll basically be a tourist for like 3 days in Beijing and go to the Great Wall and go to the Forbidden Palace and, get used to the food and things like that. And then once you're rested up and you're acclimated to the country, you go get your baby. And then you spend about 10 days there and then head back home. Well, that's the way it went when we got Molly. But when we got Abby, it was a little bit different. The process had really slowed down. And I think your visas are only good for like 18 months or some number there. So when it was coming time to get Abby, our visas were about to expire. And I kept calling the adoption agency saying, hey, when are we going to go? They're like, right around the corner. Well, it wasn't. So I finally called and I'm like, I don't want to have to go through the months-long process to reapply for this. So if there's any way, we'll go at the drop of a hat. So sure enough, they called me on a Friday and said, can you leave Sunday? I said, you betcha, yes. But part of the deal was we didn't get that first, 2, 3, 4 days in Beijing. We went right to her province to get her. So said, yep, we'll do it. We'll go. So we packed up, and my mom went with us, and we also took Molly, who was 3 at the time. We didn't want to leave her back home for 2 weeks, and we thought it might be cool for her to see the country where she was from. So we all get on the plane, and we head from Kansas City to Los Angeles. We have a layover there. And then we head from Los Angeles to Guangzhou, and that was like a 13-hour flight. Then we had a 7-hour layover in the Guangzhou airport. And then we flew to Nanchang, which is the city where we got Abby. So all told, by the time we got to Nanchang, we had been traveling for about 36 hours straight with no break. So we were exhausted, and it was nighttime over in China when we landed in Nanchang, and I had not slept at all. So I was wiped out. And as we're on the shuttle from the airport to the hotel, the tour guide is telling us, hey, you guys will get your babies in the morning. So go in, get a good night's sleep, rest up, and then tomorrow morning we'll get up, we'll have breakfast as a group, we'll go meet your babies, you'll be wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, it'll be great. Well, we pull into the little circle in front of the hotel, and we can see these Chinese women, there's about 8 of them, all holding babies, standing in the front window looking out at us. And I'm like, oh God, I think that's our babies, which I was excited about, and I was also horribly exhausted. So our tour guide's like, you know what, you guys wait here, let me go inside. So she went inside. Molly was out at this point, like we could not wake her up. Our tour guide comes back out, and she goes, well, surprise, your babies are here. So we go inside. We've got all of our luggage that we're trying to check into a hotel room. We're also getting a baby handed to us. So there's just a whole lot going on. And there was little Abby being held by this auntie. They called the workers in the orphanages aunties. And just the cutest, chubbiest little face I had ever seen. And so very, very dirty. My God, that kid was just dirty. And her orphanage, it was the Heng Feng orphanage, which was way up in the mountains, about, like they said, a 10 or 12 hour drive through the mountains to get to the city. So they had left with the babies in the morning, drove all day on these mountain roads, and they were in the same diapers that they had been in when they left that morning. So she was in a cloth diaper that was filled with just all kinds of filth and dirty and crying. And when they handed her to Rhonda, her mom, she immediately started bawling. I mean, and it was one of those where the face balls up and the eyes are squinted and the mouth opens, but there's no sound for several seconds. And then all of a sudden when it comes out, you know, good God, is it loud. So she's screaming. We're all going on no sleep after 36 hours. And then I've got to immediately get up to the room, check in, but then go and take care of the paperwork and the donation of money to the orphanage. And now, fortunately, by this time, I'd woken up a little bit, and I'm like, holy crap, I've become a dad for the second time. And that filthy little crying thing is my baby. This is amazing. So they give us the babies. You know, they tell us one parent take the baby up to the room. The other, we've got to go do the paperwork. They said, now, this is very important. Do not give these babies a bath. Don't go washing hair or cutting fingernails or anything like that. They've been through enough today. Just leave them be. So I guess that's good advice. I don't know. So we leave. Rhonda takes Abby up to the room. I go up and get the money and whatnot and go back to this other part of the hotel where we're going to take care of the paperwork. I get on the elevator. I get off on the wrong floor, and there's another group of people getting babies. And it was really cool just to like walk into the wrong place and see that happening. But what was odd to me was this was a group that was from Quebec, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So they're all speaking French to these little babies. And I thought, well, now that's weird that these Chinese babies are going to speak French. And then I thought, oh, wait, maybe it's just as weird that my Chinese babies are going to speak English. So, okay, maybe it's not so weird after all. So I go take care of all the paperwork and stuff. That takes a couple of hours. I come back, and there's Abby, this screaming little filthy baby, is now laying in the middle of one of the beds in our room, and she's clean. She's been bathed. She's had her hair washed. She had her fingernails cut, which were just ridiculously long. And oh my God, she was the happiest baby I'd ever seen. So Rhonda did not listen to anything that those people told us. Immediately stripped her out of the dirty clothes, cleaned her up, cut her fingernails, washed her hair. She smelled so sweet. And what had been this crying, screaming baby was all of a sudden a member of our family. And I mean, it took no time for the bonding to happen. The very next morning, she was going from me to Rhonda to my mom and just happy and loving everybody. And we had gotten a letter that they had translated from this foster family. So she had been in the orphanage for a month, and then she went and stayed with the foster family for 6 months. And then she went back to the orphanage for a month before we got to get her. But the foster family wrote about what a happy, loving baby she was, that if music was played, she couldn't sit still, that she had to move to the music, and she always laughed. And it's so funny because to this day, that describes Abby to a T. So she has been that way since she was with her foster family, to her orphanage, to her forever family. And then there was poor Molly. We took her over to China. She was so excited to get a little sister. But the Chinese have this interesting thing where a baby that has been adopted and gets to go to America is considered a lucky baby because they get to go to this land of opportunity. Well, all of the people want to touch the lucky babies so they can get some of the good luck from those babies. Molly's not a person that loves being touched by other people so much. So this poor kid, God love her, everywhere we went, people wanted to touch her. So it ended up, we spent 2 weeks with her riding on my shoulders to try and keep her away from people touching her. And she did fine, and it all turned out okay. But man, she struggled with that one for a while. She did not like strangers coming up to touch her. Anyway, we came back home, and we were part of a group called Families Blessed with the World's Children. And this was people that had adopted kids internationally, and they'd get together and have potlucks and picnics and whatever. So we went to a Families Blessed Christmas party. And we had, gosh, yeah, so it had been almost a year since we had brought Abby home. And we started talking to someone. Oh, where's your baby from? Well, we got her in the Yangtze province. We got her in Nanchang, the city. And they're like, hey, was she in the Hengfeng orphanage? We're like, yeah. They're like, we have friends that had a baby from the Hengfeng orphanage, and she has incredibly high lead levels. Like, you might want to get her checked out. So we take her and we get her lead level checked, and sure enough, it is like through the roof, nearly lethal. I'm going to make up some numbers here, but let's say normal is 10 or below and 60 is you're dead. She was at like 52. So her lead was through the roof. So there is treatment. It's called chelation therapy. It's not fun. You got to give your babies these little pills that almost acts like a magnet, and attracts the lead, and then they pee it out in their diaper, but you've got to collect urine, which is hard to do from a baby, and have them test it to make sure lead's coming out. And then we got some counseling from one of the nurses who said, hey, just so you know, lead levels this high means there will be developmental delays. She's going to be stunted either mentally or emotionally, but there will be delays with this. So we went through it. You know, we prayed. We had people praying with us. We sent out good thoughts, and we got her lead level down to a safe level, which was awesome. And lo and behold, not one developmental delay with this kid. She was fine. She always tested out well, and now at 16 years old, she's smart. She's funny. She's just a joy to be around. No mental or emotional delays whatsoever. She's a beast on the basketball court, and she works very hard at Cable Dahmer Chevrolet, or Cable Dahmer Buick GMC, sorry. And just a real joy. Could not be prouder to be her father, and could not love her any more than I do. So I'm going to go ahead and quit now before I start crying about this, but that's all I've got for this episode of I've Got Something to Say. As always, huge thanks to the good folks at KCTK Radio, especially Paul, runs the whole joint, does a heck of a job, and make sure that we get these stories out to all of you. So thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.